And then that's about creating a culture of change, a culture of pivot, a culture of looking forward. And you know, the Who Moved My Cheese, I'm sure you've all read, making sure your running shoes are close at hand so that you can get to the next piece of cheese really fast. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about culture, my experiences in that, some of the things to look out for, and how people, technology, and places are coming together and converging to create a real opportunity in this unprecedented time of change. Dean. There we go. So one of the things that happened was over time that I've noticed particularly in the property environment is, and just in industry full stop, business and industry full stop, there was a time where it was all about production, and it was all about the Japanese systems in production and Kaizen, and that moved on to processes. And we really looked deeply into processes, and unless you had a Lean Six Sigma black belt, you know, you weren't going to get the good jobs in property and FM. And then we focused a lot on property and sweating the asset. How do we rack, pack, and stack as many people into a building as legally possible, particularly after the fall of Lehman's. We saw the loss of the office, the loss of the printer, and subsequently the loss of the desk. And thankfully now we're really starting to focus on people and culture, the human experience, well-being, and service, which is kind of throughout my varied career, those have always been the line that I've kept true, because I think that culture and people are the true differentiator in any organization. So when I talk about strong cultures, you can see there are some brands that have strong cultures. And the one in the middle is the one that I've always been impressed with the most. And if you look at it, there's not a single word on it, but everybody knows who it is. We've got international people on the call today, and you know, you take one look at that tick and all over the world, everybody knows what it is. But not only do they know what it is, they also know their strap line, which is, of course, Nike Just Do It. And you know, Ritz-Carlton, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. So it's an amazing thing when culture gets infused through organizations. And these companies don't have a strong culture because they're successful. They're successful because they have a strong culture. They started with that in mind. And it's very powerful because it delivers the latent behaviors, not just actions. And we'll get a little bit more into that later. So why bother with culture? So some gurus, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, Peters and Waterman, talk about the essential quality of excellent companies. That culture is, if you have a strong culture, you really don't need so many policies and procedures and rules and regulations, because people just, because the culture dictates it, they know the right way to go. If you think about just do it, you know, people are guided by that as a vision statement when they're coming up against challenges. You know, when you've got a problem, instead of lamenting about it, you would say, just do it and get on with it. What happens in strong cultures is it means that people all the way down through the line, regardless of the level of the organization or the complexity, and we'll take Google, which is, you know, everybody says, I'm sick of Google. Well, there's a reason why Google gets talked about so much, is because their culture is unbelievably strong and it permeates the entire organization throughout the world. I've had some really good friends who've worked for Google, and they really are Googlers through and through. Edgar Schein also talked about how it was powerful, that it has a powerful latent and often unconscious force that determines our actions, our behaviors, collectively and individually. And that organizational culture in particular helps to determine strategy goals and the way that we operate. And it was actually Edgar Schein that kind of said, if you boil it all down, it's quite simply just the way we do things around here. And you can see that when you go into a Zappos, for example. I don't know how many of you follow Zappos. I'm a big fan. In this COVID time, they normally have a pizza afternoon with their team, and they didn't know what to do, so they sent pizzas to everybody's homes and their families, and still had that pizza afternoon. And that's really, instead of having that as an obstacle, they found a way to break down that barrier and deliver the culture, and it really meant so much to the team. If you watch it, you can watch it on YouTube, and it's quite fun to watch how, when, you know, the people open the door and their food's there. Cotter and Haskett, for those of you who are still not convinced that culture, you know, I've been talking about culture since 2000. To some of the blue chip companies, I ran a company called Live, Love, Learn for 7 years, and was really trying to talk about how culture as a differentiator for organizations, and also as you know, an economic leg up in a very competitive, particularly in the banking industry here in the UK, competitive arena. And I got a lot of eye rolling, a lot of that's the fluffy stuff. But, you know, Cotter and Haskett really showed that it can enhance performance and deliver some true significant profitability on the bottom line, and reduce costs because things are being done in a smoother way, without confrontation, without any kind of barriers. So if we look at culture in action, when we look at all of this, you start with your desired culture. And really, you've got a vision and values. And we talk, you know, when you look at true leaders, the people that you hold to be true leaders, whoever that might be for you, they are unwavering in their vision, and their values are permeated through all of everything they do, the way that they speak, the way they carry themselves, how they conduct meetings, how they engage with their employees, how they engage with people who are more senior with them. That then gives you behaviors, which then leads to actions. Now, the problem we often have is we focus a lot on the actions piece, and we don't actually, we say, okay, yeah, we've done that, tick, and it's off the list. And we look only at surface level items when we're trying to change culture or infuse culture. And what happens is it's like Teflon, just slips off because it hasn't permeated the deeper layers within the organization. All of that has to be you know, underpinned by integrity and communication. I'll give you an example. When I was at Mitie Client Services, one of the things we did was when we when we transferred over employees to our organization, we gave everybody a Jelly Belly, a little packet of Jelly Belly with a tagline that said, creating exceptional, memorable experiences one guest at a time. I signed every one of them. I went around and I met everybody. And you know, we would have anywhere from 20 to 200 people trooping into our organization on Go Live Day. The day before Go Live, I see one of my team members, and she's putting jelly beans into the sachets and getting ready. And I said, you know, what are you doing? Like, Joanna, what are you doing? And she said, well, we're going live tomorrow. I said, yeah, I know. She said, well, we have 40 people, like, we're going live. I said, well, okay, well, what are you doing? She said, well, I'm putting jelly beans into I said, what? You're putting what? And she said, well, they didn't have jelly bellies. And I said, are jelly beans exceptional and memorable? She said, no. I said, jelly bellies are exceptional and memorable. So she said, but they didn't have any. I said, you need to go figure it out, right? And of course she found them, and we gave jelly bellies. And it's a silly example, but every single part of your organization has to reflect what you're saying. And if you're willing to skimp and you're willing to cut corners, then slowly over time, your whole vision and values and your culture erodes. So having integrity in what you say at every point is a really big consideration. And of course, the way that you communicate. You need to communicate it verbally, non-verbally, in your physical spaces, in your uniforms, in your posters, in your emails. All of that has to reflect the vision and values that you're holding dear. So, Virgin Atlantic, and I asked Dean this, Dean and I ran through this last night, and Virgin Atlantic is, their slogan is to provide the best holidays in the whole wide world. And this is where language becomes very powerful, because when you look at that, that statement, the word that pops out is whole wide world, right? And when you think about that phrase, it brings you back to being a child, right? Kids use that language. It's about, you know, that fantasy, that excitement. It's about going to Disney World. It's the whole wide world. And that was done intentionally to create that kind of feeling of childlike enthusiasm. Pepsi's vision statement is to beat Coke. That's it. Be Coke. What are you doing today? Gotta be Coke. Oh, what do you got on the plans today? Gotta be Coke, right? So this is everything they do. Is every step they take, if they take an extra break, if they don't get the third shelf down, is that gonna be Coke? All of their decisions are all based on beating Coke. God help them if they do it, because then they'll be stuffed. But O2 is a telephone provider over here. Kind of like Bell over there. I know I said the B word, sorry. Bell over there. And their strapline is turning customers into fans. But what is so interesting is there's a football team here called Manchester United, and they have the opposite. It's turning fans into customers. So really, you can see how words can easily be transversed to create a different kind of meaning and a different kind of focus. Ritz-Carlton, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. The thing I love about this is because it really does denote your behaviors here. When you walk into a Ritz-Carlton, for those of you who have ever done it, or any five-star hotel, you walk into the hotel and your shoulders are back and you stand and you talk differently and you sit differently and you're very proper, right? Especially here in England, trust me, the tea up. But then most of us do business travel, right? And you walk into a travel lodge and you're like this, because you're just exhausted and it's like $60 a night or $50 a night, and your behavior is different. And that's, you can see just in that whole statement and that ambiance and that culture that it has an impact on the whole of you. And I think that's really important to understand how language and culture in that simple solution or that simple example that I just gave you does really change your behavior. Federal Express, I told the story last night to Dean. For those of you who don't know it, what made Federal Express so successful is they have planes, they flew into, it's a hub and spoke, and they fly into the center of the hub and spoke, and they all change their parcels to go to the right place, and they all fly out again. And this is how it absolutely positively must get there overnight. And one night, some minimum wage kid is sitting at there, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, he's half asleep, he's playing Sudoku, he's drinking a coffee or a Coke on his phone, and it's a massive storm, and one of the guiding towers goes down. And the kid's freaking out because like he's like 19 years old and he doesn't know what to do, and you know, big operation. And he looks up and on the wall it says absolutely positively must get there overnight. So he makes the decision on his own and hires all these cranes in. He gets all these engineers in. He thinks, this is it, I'm going to get fired. I've just spent so much money. Wait till the boss finds out. And actually what happened was the CEO turned him into a hero of the company, because what he did was he really did believe in the vision and value of the company, and he did whatever it took to absolutely positively get there overnight. And it's now folklore some 30 years later in FedEx about this kid that actually did that. It could have gone very wrong if the CEO had been different, right? Like imagine what had happened if the CEO fired him, docked his wages, sued him, whatever it was, but he didn't do that. He stood behind his culture. The other example I had recently was IKEA. There was a woman who tried to sue IKEA here in the UK and saying that the cashier tried to kick her out for breastfeeding in line. And so she said, yeah, your cashier was like really giving it to me and blah, blah, blah. And she kicked me out and whatever. And the manager of the store said, listen, that's just not our call. I'm going to check the CCTV cameras because that's just not us. That doesn't sound like us. That doesn't sound like her. Just not us. And sure enough, the woman wasn't even in the store. Like, you know, so again, knowing your culture, knowing your people can really have a positive effect. GSK enabling people to do more, feel better, and live longer. And you can see how they do that every day. You can see how that transpires through everything that they do. And of course, the NASA story about putting a man on the moon. And I'm sure all of you are familiar, but very quickly, Kennedy came in, we were putting a man on the moon, everybody was getting ready, red carpet, lights, everybody's polishing, shining, getting ready, it's crazy, the president's coming. And of course, the first person he goes to is the janitor. And everybody's like, and President Kennedy says, and you, sir, what do you do here? And without missing a beat, the janitor says, Mr. President, I helped put a man on the moon. Like, just, you know, when you've got it that nailed, it just gives me goosebumps. And maybe I'm a bit, did you admit her? Dean, you got to admit. Oh, there, I admitted her. It's okay, got it. He's asleep, or I'm captivating. I'm not sure which. We'll go with captivating. So, you know, culture is challenging. It's never ending. It's not something you just tick and get done. I'm sure you're all very familiar. But one of the things I do, and if I could indulge me for a second, if everybody could cross your arms for a second, and just feel comfortable. And now what I want you to do is put the opposite arm on top. Look down and put the opposite arm on top. Those of you watching Dean, he's struggling a little bit there, gotta say, which one goes on top. And so now just sit there for a while. And it's kind of uncomfortable. You're confused. You're not really, which one was on top? And I can't really remember. But after a while, it becomes comfortable again. And that's just change. And that's the way I try and get teams and companies that I lead to understand that, yeah, it's uncomfortable. And yeah, it's a bit confusing. But eventually, it just becomes normal. I don't want to say new normal because I'm really sick of that phrase. So it just becomes normal. And one of the things I've done through a lot of the cultural change programs that I've led is use Kotter's 8 steps for change. And I've done that because I really think it's important to keep it simple. I really think that it's important to develop maybe subsections under this, but there's a very clear evidence of how this works, why it works. So establish a sense of urgency just simply means get the top dogs involved. If the CEO, the C-suite is not involved in what you're planning to do, you will not succeed. They will head it off at the pass, and it's almost not worth starting. And you could push it from bottom up. It just is it has so much more effort when you're doing that. And you can see that with great leaders who have bought into it. Create a guiding coalition, and it's really about having a team or a posse that you think, and this is formal and informal. This doesn't mean the C-suite is all going to sit around and be the ones that do this. This is having people who have the ear of certain departments or certain divisions. They might not sit around the table. They might not have a place at the table, but certainly they have a voice within the organization. Develop a vision and strategy. So this to me is key. Everything I've ever done has been around a vision and a strategy. We just developed one for matrix bookings where I work now, and it's unlocking potential. And we challenge ourselves every day about how we're going to unlock potential. Is it through our people? Is it through our community? Is it through our clients? Is it through our technology? So it really does have application throughout. The thing about a vision is you should never get there. You should never actually achieve whatever it is you're setting out to do. Just do it. You don't say, oh, just do it. I did it. Fine, move on. You really have to be engaged in that all the time. And ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen is a never-ending pursuit. Communicate the vision, not just verbally, but also physically, in your uniforms, in your places, in your policies, and your procedures. Empower your team. And I think this is really important. Gung Ho, my favorite book, as Dean knows, if you haven't read it, Ken Blanchard, right here. And he talks about, as leaders, on page 71, he talks about, as leaders, we get to pick the players. We get to decide what position they play. We all know the rules of the game. We have developed the playbook. We know what the goal is. And then as leaders, you have to get off the field. And it was a really big lesson for me. And one of my good friends, actually my sister is on the call, and she'll know, as a type A personality, letting go of the reins was not an easy thing for me to do. But once I did, my company flourished, and we were way more successful as a team than I ever could be as a single leader. Generate short-term wins. This is really important, particularly if you have some naysayers in the room. You get people on board. You show them the win. You celebrate the win, and consolidate and produce more change. Is really just tweak, pivot. What are we doing? Does this work? Yes, no, pivot. And then anchor everything new in that vision and those set of values. Now that seems kind of simple, right? You think, okay, recruitment, learning and development, SOPs, SLAs, KPIs, procedures, policies, communication, management, leadership, reward and recognition, all of that looks really easy, right? You think, okay, well, I can do those, that's fine. But actually, that's where it lives. If you start to spider map it, it becomes, there should be no stone left unturned when you're looking at how to create a strong culture. So you kind of get down these rabbit holes. And the fun thing, though, I found, is when you create these groups, when you bring people on board and they start to create this mind mapping that you see in front of you, that really, how do we permeate every single aspect? You know, and you ask yourself, are we unlocking potential with this policy? Are we unlocking potential with this procedure? Are we unlocking potential with this kit or with this system or with this new technology? And if the answer is no, we either don't do it or we tweak it or we redo it. So you can see, we are going to make these slides available, aren't we, Dean?
Yes, we are. They'll be sent out to everybody.
So I just don't want everybody trying to like, what is she writing on that slide? So we will make them available to you after. And then what I'm seeing now, and what are the, you know, if you boil that down, it's really about, as I said at the beginning, people, place, and technology. And people, JLL did a study, Jones Lang LaSalle, it's a big property company, and they are in North America as well. But they did a study of over 7,000 people in 40 countries across 3 continents. And what people said to them is listen, we want to feel engaged, empowered, and fulfilled. That was the essence of what the people were saying to them. And these transpired in several different ways. Engagement has such a powerful impact, as many of you know. Engagement, the lack of engagement, there's 52% here in the UK have said they're not engaged, and this is before lockdown, which is really scary because engagement, people who are in the higher engagement, they have an 18% higher productivity. They've had a 12% higher customer ratings. They've had 37% less, that's wrong, I forgot to change it, Dean, 37% less absenteeism, and a whopping 16% increase in profitability. And I go back to what Cotter and Heskett said at the beginning about the power of how culture can change and engagement. And engagement and empowerment and fulfillment. Engagement is really about trust. It's a sense of commitment from the industry, from the business to the individual, and that's really being challenged, as all of you know right now in this period of COVID and lockdown. Is where's the commitment from the organizations? How are we staying connected to make sure that our team members really feel that level of engagement? Empower is a sense of control or choice. So working anywhere, anytime, the way they want, whether they work from home, whether they work in a third space, whether they're using VC or, whether they even want to be on screen or not, right? Some people have found being on screen highly disarming. My son, who's 21 years old, interestingly enough, he had a Zoom call, and his first big Zoom party when we all got locked down, and I said, how was that? And he said, well, it was weird. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when you meet 20 people, normally you kind of hang out with 2 people here, and you kind of adjust your behavior and your conversation around those 2 people because you know them and you're adapting and you're changing and you're reading all the cues. But when you're talking on a conference call to 20 people, like, you can't adjust anything. And I said, well, isn't that kind of liberating in some ways, that you just need to be purely you? And he said, well, it's also really scary. And so I've heard a lot of that from other people over this time of lockdown. The other area is fulfillment. And fulfillment is about a sense of comfort. So well-being, whether it's your emotional well-being, your psychological well-being, your physical well-being, but also just how comfortable you are in your surroundings, with your people, with the culture, with the ethos and the policies and procedures of the company. A lot of people have struggled dealing with a dissonance between how companies reported themselves to be and their comfort level around their values during this time of COVID, which have been really tested, haven't they, for some of these companies, to how they actually are. So that's been an interesting change to see all of that coming through. And then, you know, the place is about working anytime, anywhere, how people are, you know, I always say that people make places, and thereafter places make them. And you can see that again when you walk into an environment that is toxic. You can feel it. I mean, if you've ever come home and somebody's in a bad mood in your house, and you walk in the door and you haven't spoken to anybody, you haven't seen anybody, but you just know somebody's in a bad mood, and you just want to back it out, you know, go to the pub and let it all blow over. Well, people feel that in your organization as well. And it's really palpable when people feel that. And of course, technology, which, you know, technology is so fun, but it's also really scary. I recently watched the Social Dilemma. I posted that on Instagram, and I rarely post, and on LinkedIn, I rarely post my personal views, but I just wanted people to see what they were choosing between, and what's going on with AI and computer learning, and how that's dictating, not just predicting our decisions, but actually making them for us. So I think there's some amazing advancements, amazing innovations that are happening right now during this lockdown period, particularly. And I think we're moving at a rate of knots around it. I mean, even Dean and I we were talking about doing this 3 months ago, and we're like, oh my God, how are we gonna, or 6 months ago, I guess it was before lockdown. And we are like, oh, we're so worried about the technology, and what if we don't hook up? And, you know, now we're like, hey, how's it going? Just hook up, say hi. Everybody's very used to it. So we have moved really fast in technology, and there's certain industries, so the medical and the pharma industry is moving really, really fast right now. Wearables is amazingly fast. Resource booking and what's going on there has changed a lot. And I'll show you my next slide. She says, enter. Mute. There we go. Sorry, I was muted for a second. So this is some of the technology that's out there right now, and I just think it's so cool. You know, that people are doing yoga together, thousands of people all over the world at the same time. The infrared technology that's occurring. So we're working on something where there's a kiosk at the desk when you walk in. It automatically scans you as you're walking in to check your temperature. Things like wayfinding, the bottom one, which is pretty groovy, and you can book a desk, book a meeting room, book your time slot into the building to make sure that 200 people aren't booking in at the same time. And you can do all of that with your phone and a QR code. So you're not touching anything, right? Now, all of that's just prior to COVID happening. People only looked at booking meeting rooms, but now the desk booking and even lift slots are being booked. So to make sure that people aren't getting too tight. Sensor technology, track and trace, we've heard a lot about that. You know, I think people are starting to become a little bit more okay with being tracked and traced, because the reality is you are being tracked and traced anyway. Just, you know, now I think people are getting a little bit more okay with it. The cool one at the top, I saw this last 2 days ago. It's just a bracelet that projects your phone, or all of your phone icons onto your arm, and you can take it into the bath, you can take it swimming, and you just literally use your arm as a keypad. And I thought that was really quite fun to see how that was moving on. And I can't see because everybody's thing is there, but if you can see a mouth guard, this one is a mouth guard that is being used by footballers, or you call them soccer players. I used to call them soccer players too, once upon a time, and starting to move into also boxing and American football, where the mouth guard goes in, and what happens is there's sensor technology in it. There's somebody on the sidelines, and they can see what the impact is if you've been hit, and what the concussion ratio is, and whether or not you need to come off the field. So it's pretty advanced technology. And what it will do, for those of you who did watch the movie Concussion, you can see that it's really changing. the way that we interact with our sports guys and getting them off the field. And they're looking at it for boxing, which obviously for those of you who saw the later years of Muhammad Ali would welcome this as technology that we could bring to the forefront. So tips for success, as I summarize here, is just have that strong vision, be passionate, be unrivaled and unbridled in your conviction of it. Bring the team with you, always communicate in any way you can. Celebrate success at every second you can. Celebrate individuals. I always think it's easy to find somebody doing something wrong. It takes a real leader to find somebody doing something right and accolade them. Anybody can find something doing something wrong. Embed the vision in everything you do. Be a fierce protector of your vision and your values. Just unwavering, relentless pursuit of those things, and have fun. This is 75% of our waking life is spent in a work-related activity. And if you hate your job, your life kind of sucks. So try and have fun and create an environment of fun. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Debra, for all of that insight, and certainly great to hear from somebody who's lived it and done it. I certainly have a number of questions, but would love to open it up to the floor. If anybody has any questions for Debra in terms of her presentation and some of the nuggets that she's put in there, by all means, feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask away. All right. Well, I know that one that I certainly have, Debra, and would love your thoughts on is, with the world we live in now, with so many people working remotely, how do you normalize the changes that everybody is going through in a remote workplace while still, being empathetic to those that have the individual needs? And then the second part of that is how does that transcend into the cultural norms of the organization over time?
Okay, so the first one is how do you normalize it? Well, I don't think you can. There's nothing normal about it. And I think the second we start to try and make it normal, we fail. Because I really believe that nothing about this is normal from just a sociological perspective. And I think we need to embrace whatever people are feeling. Individually and collectively. We still have businesses to run, sure, but nothing's shut down. We're still operating. Some people are operating at a higher rate than they've ever operated before. I was saying earlier that the gym that I go to, they're charging me 80%. I can't have a shower. They're not giving me soap. They won't give us mats for our yoga. We have to bring our own mats. They won't give us towels. There's no water. I can't spin my bathing suit, so their cost is significantly less than it was, yet they're charging me, I say I'm getting probably 60% of the value, but I'm being charged 80% of the cost. So some people are still doing quite well. The tech companies, I think, are doing very, very well as well. So I think, I do think that we can't normalize something that's not normal. And particularly, our kids, if we look at our kids, how is this, I don't want them to have this as normal. I don't want them to feel this is normal. And Dean, I love the fact that you use the word empathy. And if you look at some of the campaigns in America that are going on, empathy is their real platform that they're talking about, and being empathetic leaders. And empathy is very different than sympathy, right? I never want anybody's sympathy, but empathy is certainly standing in somebody's shoes and really trying to help them as they journey through whatever they're going through. I have team members right now that I'm having to coach because they're struggling, and you need to be wherever they are.
Yeah. Okay, great. We have a question from Michelle. In Kotter's 8 steps, which steps present the most challenges?
It depends on the organization. Great question, though. Great question. I would say the consolidate and produce more change, because I think that there's, when things are going well, there's a tendency to get lazy and think, I don't need to do anything. It's fine, right? It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And so you stop reinforcing that at every step. So yeah, I would say that's the hardest one, and to keep people enthused about where you're going and what you're doing, and the vision and why it's working.
Jonathan has chimed in with, when we talk about the cultural silos, leaders in this digital contact with COVID, how do we celebrate in an organizational level without that feeling of showing off?
I think it depends on who you're celebrating, right? Like, I think you can still celebrate. I think if you're celebrating other people, you know, showing off is about, to me, that's about like, look at me, look at me, look at me. But if you as your organization are celebrating your team or your accomplishments, you know, there's no way you should stop doing that. You know, that's, if anything, we should be doing more of it, because I think we need that positivity. The company, as I said, I work for is Matrix Booking, so MB. So as an accolade, I send everybody Mars bars, as a kind of just something that they've done. If they've done something exceptional, I'll send them a Mars bar. But yeah, I think we need to do things that are different. I was speaking to a bank over here about how to do things differently and celebrate our success. And one of the things was around people wanting to be more present and centered and their well-being. And so they're doing this global yoga day. And so we're sending them yoga mats and yoga, what are they called, the blocks, and they're all branded, right? So you know, you'll be in downward dog and the values will be shoved into your face. But you know, it's a great way, because people then say again about the commitment from the organization. You're acknowledging them. I think we should be acknowledging people more than ever before, because if they're making things work now, wow, that's pretty special.
Great. You know, from your perspective, Debra, what are some things that employees or people that are choosing organizations to work for, what are they looking for as it relates to culture, technology, and remote working during these, you know, strange times? What's really important to those folks?
So I think people want to be treated as adults and trust. And that's, you know, if I go back to engage, empower, fulfill, engage is about a sense of commitment from the organization, which is all about trust. And, you know, if you've done your recruiting right, if you've really, and that's the key, right? Get your recruiting right the first time. Spend the time, effort, and money. And you know, because otherwise you're just, you know yourself, if you just get on that hamster wheel and you just go for the quick win, it's a false economy, because it's going to cost you 6 times later down the road. But if you really spend the money and the time and the effort in recruiting, you're going to hire professionals. You're going to hire people who are dedicated, and they want to be trusted. They want the flexibility. They want you to know that, you know, they're going to get the job done. I think that the thing that's been really challenging is we haven't, as a just business and industry full stop, really haven't supported the middle managers. So we went from presenteeism to, you know, even before this, even as we were starting to remote working, and why people were so against remote working wasn't because the teams weren't ready. It's that the managers weren't ready to turn to an output spec, if you will, you know, focusing on what the output is opposed to the presenteeism and input, you know, punch the clock, punch the clock, punch the clock. There's a great line, I think it's in, can't remember what book it is. I think it's Gung Ho, but the days of coming to work and checking out are over, right? Like, if you're here, you're here. And some people, and output specs are great, because some people have they have sprint mentality, right? They can get more done in 4 hours than most people can get done in 8. But you're paying them for the item, for the output, for the project, for the delivery. You know, you don't buy gas, you buy a travel, you buy transportation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And can you maybe touch a little bit on some of the generational differences? And from you know, I think more than ever right now, we're in work environments that transcend, you know, multiple generations, multiple belief systems, multiple embracing of technology. And many people have many different wants and needs right now, more than ever. So how do you be inclusive and still impactful when we're dealing with so many variables as it relates to that from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's aces in places, right? There's so much knowledge that we dismiss if we dismiss our elder generation. There's so much insight and so much learning. And yeah, sure, I'm frustrating for my kids when I'm on the computer. So, I get it, but if you threw out everything that I know, then that's a waste as well, right? And I also think that the young guys, if you look at what they're doing around saving the planet and Black Lives Matter, and they're standing for something with so much conviction that we, quite frankly, screwed up earlier. Our generation I came out of university and I was like, find a job, they're holding our conscious, these young people. And we need to listen. We really need to listen. So, I just think that we've got an opportunity, and I'm of a certain age, and so I look at the older generation, and they've got our past, and these young kids coming in have our future, and we need the whole of the line, right? You need to look laterally at what's possible. There's so much that they can offer. And I do think that we need to have different expectations. It's not a one size fits all. And that's, again, where we get it wrong. They don't, the team member, regardless of their age, sex, gender, race, they're not getting it wrong. We're getting it wrong, right? And Simon Sinek, talks about, listen, we've got these crazy kids coming in who have all, it's up to us to guide them. It's up to us to adapt and to change, and manage their expectations.
And when do you know you've got it right?
When do you know you've got it right? When people love coming to work, like, that the crest of that high is so amazing. When there's true respect, regardless of the layers of your organization, but it's just when you've got that respect and the camaraderie and the care and the empathy, and that you're truly standing for somebody else's good. I grew up in a family. I've got 5 people in my family other than me, and it taught me to be selfless, because I knew that 5 people were always looking after me. I didn't have to look after myself. I always had 5 people watching my back. And I grew up with that amazing support system, and it's infused into an organization where I think if you're standing for other people's greatness all the time, then you're standing for them to, even when they're down or when they're not fulfilling their potential, that when you stand for them, I think that's something pretty amazing. And when people grow and develop, like I've seen so many people just flourish. My favorite thing in the world is to watch people just absolutely shine. People who have been terrified of public speaking, and stand up and give an address. I had one young lady, she was like screaming at me, calling me all kinds of names because I was making her public speak, and she did it a couple more times, and now she's this extraordinary public speaker. And she after almost every talk she gives, she calls me and says, I couldn't have done that had you not pushed me. I didn't like you very much at the time, but you stand for the possibility of other people. I had one lady, I was running a reception company, and she wanted to be a midwife, right? Totally nothing to do with being a receptionist or a meeting and event manager. And so I helped her to get there. And in return, guess what? I got 110% all the time that she was there. And you can see that when women are taken care of in maternity, or even now men with paternity, which I hope more and more start taking that opportunity. You can see that they're really dedicating themselves more to work, because again, the engagement, the commitment, engage, empower, fulfill, the sense of commitment from the company, the sense of choice in the middle, and the sense of comfort is all being kind of brought together. And I think when you have that from an organization, those of us who've worked in lots of organizations, it's really rare. So, you want to stick with them.
I know you're an avid reader, Debra. Do you have any suggestions for any books on this topic? I know you mentioned Gung Ho a couple of times during your, is there any other suggestions for people that might be interested in a good read?
Yeah, there's one that I just can't remember the name of, but 10X is great. The 10X rule is fantastic. There's another one I can't remember, but I'll send you a list. The Future of Work, Blue Ocean Strategy, I love. Really love Blue Ocean Strategy. Recently read, just talks about, you know, finding a new path, kind of really exciting. I also liked David and Goliath a lot, because I think that one of the things that taught me is if they're a big organization, you know, if they've got, you know, massive organization, then you're small and agile, right? So it's just looking at using your weaknesses or perceived weaknesses as your potentials. And it really helped me. I was doing a massive bid against some of the biggest caterers and events businesses in the world. And we were this tiny little company. Like we were totally the David in this situation, and we won the bid because we decided to do something totally wacky. We thought, you know what, we're not going to win it if we go head to head. Like, there's just no way. We don't have their pockets, we don't have their infrastructure, we don't have their history, legacy, all that stuff. We need to be wacky. We need to just, and if, you know, we're going to look foolish trying if we have to. And we created this amazing kids book all about the bid and the company that we were bidding for. And it was this massive child's book, and you open Once Upon a Time and pop-ups and things like that. And we won the bid. And what they said to us after was, we want people who think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about just really, that was a great book for me.
Yeah. I'm not sure which book it was, but Chantel chimed in with yes, and I love that book. So certainly some of the recommendations are familiar with some of the people on the call. Well, unless anybody has any final questions, I think we'll wrap it up from there. Debra, thanks so much for joining us at the end of your day in London. Everybody who's on the call, thanks so much for joining us as well. Really encourage everybody to get involved in Hacking HR. It's on LinkedIn. There's a Slack channel as well. #HackingHR. Again, thanks everybody for joining. We'll get the presentation and the recording out to everybody in the next day or so. And have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, everyone.